Calls for justice ring out all over the metro area tonight. Thousands of protesters show up from northeast Portland to Lake Oswego.
Plus, an Oregon Police Department faces bias accusations. Critics say a caught-on-camera moment shows they were taking sides in a protest.
And a spike in coronavirus cases in Oregon as much of the state moves forward with reopening. What health officials say is behind the new numbers.
This is KGW News at 11.
Thousands show up for an 8th night in a row in Portland, calling for an end to police brutality and racism. A line of people stretched from the east side to downtown across the Hawthorne Bridge. Protesters for a moment tonight had the ear of Portland Mayor Ted Wheeler.
You have never listened to our voices. You have turned the other cheek to my people.
Well, my question is, why are we not putting the monies into the schools to educate these black and brown boys?
Huge moments there with the mayor. Others gathered in Waterfront Park. They listened to speakers, including City Commissioner Joanne Hardesty. They chanted the name of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, who, by the way, would have turned 27 today. She was shot and killed by police in Louisville. So I'm Maggie Vespa here in the KGW newsroom. Laurel Porter tonight is in the studio.
And we thank you for joining us tonight. Let's switch to a live look from Sky 8. Much of the crowd tonight is in front of the Justice Center. This is a scene that we have seen for many nights in a row, with hundreds of people gathered on one side of the fence line that is protecting the Justice Center and police on the other side. That is also where we find our Mike Benner at 3rd and Madison. Mike?
Well, Laurel, maybe it's because it's Friday night. Maybe it's because this movement is picking up steam. Maybe a little bit of both. But I can tell you the crowd out here is much larger than what we've seen over past nights. And I can tell you it's a lively bunch, very energetic, lots of chanting in the direction of officers protecting the Justice Center and the inmates inside. We even saw one guy burn the American flag. The protest you see right here caps off a busy afternoon and evening of demonstrations across the metro area. Take a look. Friday evening in southeast Portland, David Douglas teachers and community members rally for change. This demonstration came at the ideal time for Jessica Barber.
What's his name? George Floyd!
Since George Floyd, I've just been depleted, and I was really almost about to give up. But then I came out here and it's just uplifted me, and it was something that I really needed.
It's about how every life matters.
And she is not alone.
But we're all one big community together as a people.
Check out the scene in predominantly white Lake Oswego. Hundreds gathered at Millennium Plaza Park to say Black Lives Matter. The crowd then marched through the streets chanting, warming the hearts of the teen organizers.
This is way beyond anything we ever thought could have happened. We thought it was going to be just us and maybe a couple friends, but this is insane.
I think this is long past due. This needs to keep happening. This is not a one-day thing. This is not a one-week movement. This needs to continue, and Black lives need to matter every day. A sentiment echoed at this roundabout in northeast Portland. These seniors, fearing the spread of COVID-19, are avoiding the large protest downtown, but they still want their voices heard. There's a problem in America that needs fixing.
Well, police violence is only one tiny little part that hopefully will change pretty quickly, but the whole institutional racism is a huge issue.
What's his name? George Floyd! What's his name? George Floyd!
And if anybody understands that, it's Jessica Barber. She encourages everyone to listen to what's happening around them and speak up.
You know, people like me, Black lives, we need our brothers and sisters.
Take your knee!
To help uplift us when we get too tired.
Take your knee off my neck!
All right, back out here live outside the Justice Center. During that story, police just warned the crowd of criminal activity at Southwest 3rd and Main, and they said if it does not stop, that they will use force, so they're giving peaceful demonstrators a chance to leave now. Something else I want to mention, we are hearing reports of other demonstrations later tonight and into the morning. As always, KGW will stay on top of it, so keep an eye on KGW.com and KGW News at sunrise tomorrow morning. Back to you.
All right, we appreciate the update downtown, and that was a great round robin of all those protests, Mike. So let's keep it going. Earlier today, hundreds of doctors and nurses and healthcare workers all came together at Pioneer Square to show their solidarity. It's part of the White Coats for Black Lives movement, and those who participated silently knelt for roughly 9 minutes with their fists in the air. That's to represent the amount of time George Floyd was pinned down by that white police officer. There have been demonstrations like this across the country this week. And by the way, workers from OHSU among those in the protest, and today the hospital actually spoke out about another aspect of all of this related to the COVID-19 pandemic. They're worried the use of tear gas and other chemical means on protesters can cause the virus to spread faster. That's because the gas makes people cough, cry, and it irritates the respiratory system in general, all ways to get the virus or spread it to someone else. And Portland Mayor Ted Wheeler also addressed this tonight in that moment that we showed you at the top of the show. He showed up to Chapman Square to listen to protesters, but according to the Oregonian, he also told them he's in favor of a 30-day ban on tear gas. And he said he's told police not to use sonic warning tones to control crowds after officers activated them at the end of an all-night protest. We should point out when we say tear gas, we're actually referring to CS gas, and police say that's what they've been using. And they make that distinction because they say it's a powdered form of tear gas. Therefore, it's easier to escape and the effects wear off sooner. Protesters not satisfied with that argument. And today, a group of them, along with the organization Don't Shoot Portland, filed a class action lawsuit against the city demanding they stop using CS gas.
And speaking of a tear gas ban, Seattle Mayor Jenny Durkan has temporarily banned police from using it as protests continue there, too. The mayor said today the ban is for 30 days. This comes after urging from 3 civilian police watchdog groups. Seattle's police chief also said officials will review police crowd control policies. Today, Oregon Senator Jeff Merkley announced legislation to address police brutality. His bill would create a national database of police misconduct to provide greater oversight and accountability across the country. In a taping of Straight Talk yesterday, he talked about racism as an institutional force and the differences in how police interact with people of color.
That huge difference in how this dynamic has worked between police and citizens. It's something almost any person from a community of color can talk about incidences in their life where they were treated differently because of their skin color and where they had less of a partnership, more fear. And that is that's at the root of this.
You can listen to our entire conversation tomorrow on Straight Talk at 8:30 p.m. and on KGW.com. Now to Salem, where a police officer is facing public criticism for a moment caught on video. The officer is seen warning people to leave the area ahead of curfew, but some say who he warned showed bias. Catherine Cook reports.
So we're going to really enforce the citywide curfew shutdown so we can arrest anybody who's walking around.
In this now viral social media post, a Salem police officer is captured on video Monday night talking with a group of armed men outside a Salem beauty salon. He asks them to get into their cars or buildings ahead of the approaching curfew. Listen.
My command wanted me to come talk to you guys and request that you guys secrete either inside the beauty salon or in your vehicle somewhere where it's not a violation. I don't think so we don't look like we're playing favorites.
It's that last line, so we don't look like we're playing favorites, that outraged a lot of people. They complained on social media and to the city of Salem that it did indeed look like the officer was playing favorites. The video labels the men as Proud Boys. We haven't been able to verify if they belong to any groups, but we do know that another far-right group, Patriot Prayer, has shown up to support Glamour Salon. The business drew attention last month when it reopened against the governor's stay-at-home orders. Salem Police Chief Jerry Moore responded to concerns over the video with this message.
The message we have received is a concern that we are treating people differently. For that, I tell you, I am sorry. Sorry that there's even a thought that this department would treat some different than others.
This week, protests against systemic racism have reached a fever pitch in Salem. Video shows demonstrators around the state capitol. For the first time in its history, the city of Salem instituted a curfew. In another first, Salem police officers have used tear gas to manage crowds. Moore says he talked with the officer in the video about the impact his interactions had on the community.
Unfortunately, he had not been fully briefed about enforcement of the curfew before he spoke with the group. Moving forward, all officers tasked with enforcement of the curfew will be properly educated before deployment.
Moore says officers might address people who are lawfully armed differently than people throwing bricks and bottles. Because of that, he says their responses will vary accordingly, but without favoritism or bias.
Our history has always been to assist and watch over lawful, peaceful demonstrations. We will continue to do that, be it open carry Second Amendment advocates or Black Lives Matter advocates. We just want people to obey the law and stay safe.
Catherine Cook, KGW News.
Turning to coverage of the pandemic now. Today, Oregon officials reported the third highest number of new coronavirus cases in a day since the pandemic started. And this chart shows the number of new cases each day since March.
what's happening at 3rd and Main. And quite frankly, I'm not quite sure I feel comfortable going to check that out.
And you haven't been able to see people tampering with the fence, which is also something they said, and they've been so pointed about saying that people should not touch the fence or tamper with the fence. But you haven't seen that from where you are.
I have seen that, Laurel. I have seen that in the last 10 minutes or so, kind of right in front of us, actually. They're kind of pushing it back and forth, pulling it towards them, pushing it away from them, that sort of thing. So I have seen that along with the water bottles, but in fact, something just got thrown over the fence. I'm not sure what it was. They're now saying the park is closed. I will say this, Laurel, it does seem like some people have filtered out of here, but still there are hundreds of people still here.
I know from this angle, it looks like people are pretty much staying put, watching what's going to happen.
Mike, can you tell, by the way, if that, I think that's too far away for you to be able to tell if that's the same CS gas or tear gas that you inhaled 2 nights ago that was launched, but that's such a topic of debate today as to whether the city will continue using that. It does appear to be, just by looking at it.
Right. And I'm not getting that feeling either, that burning sensation, so I think it might just be smoke.
Okay.
Again, not positive, but I think even from this, our position, I feel like we'd be feeling and tasting that tear gas if it was tear gas.
Gotcha.
And we don't have that quite yet.
Because police are...
And to add to what I've seen with the fence shaking and the water bottles, it appeared right before that smoke that there could have been some fireworks coming from the crowd. If not the crowd, it was maybe a flashbang from police. It kind of all happened at once.
Police are really under a lot of pressure right now as far as the use of tear gas. Oh, go ahead, Mike. Tell us what they're saying.
No, you're exactly right. They're now saying that there's violent criminal behavior. So not just criminal behavior, they're calling it violent criminal behavior. A little bit of a change here in the last 10 minutes. But again, I don't know if that's here at our corner at 3rd and Madison or if something else is happening at 3rd and Main. It almost looks like that area has thinned out more than the area right in front of us. So perhaps it's happening in this area, but it's just so hard to see because it's dark, but then you have these bright white lights shining in our direction, so you can't see everything.
Okay. Well, Mike Benner, we appreciate you keeping an eye on it for us. I'm being told that we do have to throw it to a commercial break, but we know you'll stay on it for us, and we'll be checking in throughout the show. We'll be right back.
The Justice Center. From this angle, it doesn't look like there are a lot of people there, but we think more are gathered just outside of this shot here. But our Mike Benner does say several hundred people have left. This was a peaceful protest for hours with a lot of people gathered listening to speeches at Waterfront Park. A lot of those people left and crossed back over the Hawthorne Bridge. But this gathering here now called a civil disturbance, police ordering everybody to go home. They've closed off a large swath of downtown. Police saying on their Twitter feed that some are throwing fireworks and flares at police. Also, people are pointing lasers at the drivers of the sound truck. So we're keeping an eye on things. Again, they've said that most of downtown is closed and they've ordered people to go home. We'll be back after this.
KGW Weather is sponsored.
I want to go back to our reporter Mike Benner down outside the Justice Center. And Mike, you said a lot of people have left?
Yeah, a lot of people have left, but there's still several hundred people still here. The crowd is quite large. If you're just catching the newscast, wow, there's more smoke being deployed around 3rd and Main right now. Looks to be smoke, not tear gas. There's fireworks. There's some flashbangs or fireworks coming now. But this situation has truly intensified over the last 30 minutes or so. Criminal activity, according to police, was happening. They said fireworks and projectiles were being thrown. There's a firework just thrown into the oh dear. But anyhow, so police are responding now with crowd-controlled munitions, and they're urging everyone to leave, and they're trying to close off basically all of downtown from from Lincoln to Burnside and NATO to 13th. That is a huge part of downtown. That appears to be, there's tear gas, some different colored tear gas here. Looks like tear gas, you can kind of tell the difference. Tear gas has what appears to be a green tint to it, and then there's that smoke that's obviously just white.
And we could see a lot of that
so again,
smoke
I mean,
from Sky 8.
That appears, right, yeah, and our security detail with us is, believes that is tear gas as well. In fact, the people that it's consuming look like they have gas masks, and that's why they're not moving at this point.
You think that the protesters
and this is just
have
real
gas
interesting considering the comments. Yes, they do. But very interesting considering the comments that Mayor Ted Wheeler made just a few hours ago, that he'd be talking to his people about stopping and banning tear gas. And he was going to have that talk tomorrow morning, but it's not tomorrow morning yet, and it appears that tear gas is still being used out here.
Yeah, we heard protesters asking why he hadn't made that decision tonight. Clearly it's status quo from the last several nights.
That's right. So another warning just coming across the loudspeaker from police. Just giving everyone another warning to please leave. We're at right now at 3rd and Madison. 3rd and Main seems to be the area that they're using smoke and tear gas in. And now I'll let you listen in, protesters saying don't shoot. The timing of all of this too quite interesting, because the last couple of nights a small crowd has remained into the early morning hours, and there's been some action then. So it almost makes you think police don't want this to go well into Saturday morning. They want to end this thing, and they want to end it now.
Yes, the last couple of nights they've been there like 2 to 4 in the morning making arrests with people who have stayed behind. They call them agitators.
And we are going on a week plus. I mean, we're,
That's
what is this, the 8th night, I believe, of massive demonstrations. And the mayor today did promise next week to unveil a list of reforms for police in the Portland area. And we heard speeches earlier, people sort of, touching on topics that they would like sort of to be highlighted by the city, but really nothing concrete offered at this point from the city, from the mayor, from the bureau today. So we are kind of stuck as far as protesters' demands are concerned in this limbo, and obviously we're going into the weekend when people arguably have even more time on their hands. So watching the tactics tonight feels like it really could set a tone for the weekend. Of course, a big uncertainty is any announcements that we could hear from the mayor tomorrow regarding that tear gas usage.
Right.
And we're hearing on the
I'm seeing off in the distance.
I was just going to tell you, Mike, that we're hearing
that
police
Laurel.
are being hit with slingshot rounds, according to their Twitter feed.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of things flying through the air, but again, with the bright white lights and then the darkness, it's really hard to tell. I did see off in the distance near the other side of the Justice Center, so a block and a half away from us, one of those trucks or vans pull away with all of those officers hanging off the side. So things appear to, again, be intensifying by the minute out here.
So that's likely the rapid response team. And we were listening to Lieutenant Franz Schering earlier this week talking about how they don't like to have to engage with protesters who are causing disruptions, and that they're physically and emotionally exhausted. So looking at it from their point of view tonight, it's been a long 8 days.
That's very right. Laurel, I was there at that press briefing that evening, and it was interesting to hear the commander talk. He said, we don't want to do this. We don't want to engage in this behavior with demonstrators. And he said his officers are going home physically and emotionally hurt every day. And he says we don't want to get to this point, but here we are.
And they're challenged with how to really get this group to disperse, because as we've been talking about, there's a lot of pressure not to use the tear gas. Seattle's banned it now for 30 days. The mayor's saying he's open to not using it, but he wants to have some viable alternatives. And also, he's directed police not to use the long-range acoustic device, except to only share information. The device can emit this sonic warning tone, which is louder than normal speakers, which they use as a tactic to make the crowds disperse, but the mayor's also told them not to use that. So exactly how they're going to get this group to disperse, you wonder.
And guys, really interesting update and insight from the Multnomah County Sheriff. I just want to get this tweet out. They just tweeted out seconds ago, quote, despite multiple warnings to disperse, protesters pushed the fence over. Deputies deployed smoke as a deterrent, which is what Mike was pointing out. There are some different smokes that we're seeing there. And then it goes on to say when smoke was not effective, gas was deployed. There are approximately 400 people inside the Justice Center. We're legally responsible and morally responsible for their health and safety. So they are kind of pointing out, and Mike was right, that you saw smoke first and then you did see tear gas being deployed. And it seems like that was They use that as a second option, and they're kind of arguing that they're doing so because they have to protect. They said they have 300 inmates and 100 employees inside the Justice Center. So this does match what, you know, Mike was summing up on the ground for us. It's crazy to see it from the air.
Mike, what are you hearing?
Oh, that firework looks like fireworks in the crowd. We got some flashbangs. Looks like tear gas. We're going to get moving here. A lot of police vehicles on the other side of the park from us right now.
Now you see a lot of people moving.
That was.
Are you moving out of
Yeah,
there?
that was a flashbang, I think. Yeah, we're gonna move. Yeah, we're gonna move a little bit. We'll try to keep the picture live here as we move. Yeah, those flashbangs, they are disorienting, and that's why they're used.
We
Obviously, just a warning that sometimes people shout in situations like this, so it's not our intention to have any bad words come through the air, but sometimes that happens.
Yeah, you're not really in control of that, Mike. We got that.
Yeah, we watched this, and we just do want to put it in perspective that for many, many hours, thousands were gathered once again for an 8th night to really stand in solidarity for what a lot of people see as a watershed moment for change and racial equalds. And
here we go, officers moving up.
They're moving up towards you?
Officers moving up the street here. They're moving up 4th towards City Hall. We're moving towards the Wells Fargo building, so we're moving southbound on 4th.
You pointed out, Mike, they're expanding their perimeter immediately. When they order people to leave the area, it's always kind of been, on past nights, a generic leave the downtown core, leave the area around the Justice Center, but they expanded their area out several blocks, like up to 13th from NATO, and really far north and south in downtown, and that speaks to what they've been trying to do sort of gradually on previous nights, but they just really ramped it up immediately, and clearly now they're moving you out physically, the protesters out physically.
And that's what led me to say that, you know, it seems like they want to end this now and not let this thing go till 2 in the morning like it has, and 4 o'clock in the morning like it has. So you'll see if you can see through. So there's a line of officers in gear, and then a number of support vehicles trailing them. Let's go ahead and move back, Ken, a little bit.
And this has really been the pattern we've seen.
And now the problem too is you're going to have some. We're going to have some cars now, some vehicles caught up in this, whether it's protesters leaving or people getting out of work or what have you. There are vehicles in the area, so that's going to present a challenge here momentarily for officers.
We'd heard reports earlier, Mike, that there were some children in the crowd. Did you see any children? Have they mostly gone home?
Most children have gone home. I did see as we were walking out of that area, there was a car parked in the protest area. Sometimes there's support vehicles for protesters and demonstrators, but there was 1 or 2 kids in there. But for the most part, I've not seen any other children. So right now, the standoff you're seeing right now between demonstrators and police is right in front of City Hall. And it looks like police are advancing, pushing the crowd further away from the Justice Center and now City Hall.
It feels like an inevitable repercussion of what's happening right now. It could very well be what we've seen happen on past nights, which is as people get pushed back, I mean, they basically scatter in all different directions. And granted, that is clearly what police, or at least one thing that police are trying to avoid with expanding their perimeters so widely that, you know, pushing people out, like we said, between 1st and 13th. But on previous nights, there's been so much chaos. There has been throughout the city because police have basically been chasing people around. Once they disperse the crowd, then it just becomes this sort of massive sort of sequence of protesters running in all different directions and police running after groups of 2 or 3 or 4 people. And it seems like everybody's staying together.
And if you remember,
for the most
guys,
part,
last Tuesday, if you remember last Tuesday, kind of to your point there, Maggie, is that's why we saw those officers zipping up and down different streets and blasting the sirens, trying to flush out those small pockets, is what we saw Tuesday night. But right here we have a very large crowd, a couple hundred people, I'd say, easily. It has been interesting though to see how the Portland Police Bureau has changed tactics throughout the week. I mean, it seems like they do something different almost every night, and tonight it seems to be pushing people out of all of downtown, not just the Justice Center.
Mike, have you gotten any vibe or any chance to talk to people at all about their take on the mayor's appearance tonight? This is the first time on night 8 that he had showed up and talked to protesters, and I'm curious if anybody's given you their review of that moment.
I saw what I've seen. I haven't talked to people per se one-on-one about it, but I have seen just responses to it, and they did not want the mayor to wait until tomorrow morning to discuss tear gas and other tactics. They wanted him to act now, and he said it would be tomorrow morning before he had a chance to speak with who he needed to handle that.
And that was something that we know he was aware of.
A little bit of a standoff here. Everyone just kind of staring at each other here at Jefferson and 4th. And now we got another group coming in behind us of demonstrators that's enforcing, making the size here larger. Officers definitely outnumbered right now.
Can you see the officers, Mike? Are they on foot? Are they in vehicles? How are they pushing this crowd back?
They're on foot. We're staying a little bit back here to not get, ourselves in too much trouble. But they're on foot, and they have some, as you can see, the flashing lights. They have 4 or 5 support vehicles behind them. A lot of chanting still happening. We've seen that throughout the night.
Mike, it's a little tough for us to hear. What is that police truck saying?
The latest announcement was too far down the block. I did not hear that one.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can hear this. Unlawful assembly. Leave the area to the south, or you'll be subject to crowd control munitions. Leave now. If you're in Terry Shrunk Plaza, leave to the south now. I will say this: they are giving they're giving plenty of warnings to demonstrators to leave the area. I'm not keeping track, but at least I would say at least 10 to 12 warnings so far since 11 o'clock. Here's another one right now.
Mike, are you still seeing fireworks going off? We can see to the left sometimes some flashes of light.
There was a big boom there that had to be, I believe, a flashbang maybe at the other intersection that we're not at. But I'm not seeing fireworks. That could have been one. Actually, now I'm seeing some smoke and potentially tear gas closer to the Justice Center. So perhaps there's still some demonstrators milling around down there that they're trying to clear out. Here's another warning from police.
Yeah, we hear them warning about a use of force.
Another warning of crowd control munitions.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, we have these press conferences every day after these protests, and either the chief or the assistant chief or the mayor, who is the police commissioner, or all of the above, have sort of like made points of parsing out the terminology that basically they would like used about these tactics, telling us that it's not flashbangs, it's flashbang type devices, or it's not tear gas, it's CS gas. And, you know, just looking at the video on the ground and seeing what our crews have seen on the ground and seeing the impact that it has, I can't imagine, like, in the mind of protesters, the impact just seems the same. And we hear from the mayor that he's thinking about walking back tear gas, and even went as far as to say he supports Seattle's ban on tear gas. And here we are, and this may as well be Tuesday. I mean, it's just such a similar scene for all of the talk that we've heard each morning, with clarifications and with talk of possible changes to tactics.
Right, these scenes are very similar, and they continue to play out night after night. And that's why I think, in my opinion, and I haven't been able to communicate with police tonight, but in my opinion, I think they're acting the way they are tonight and moving as swiftly as they are, if you will, to make sure this thing doesn't drag on till 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning like we've seen in nights past.
And it was 1 week ago tonight that we saw the peaceful protest be actually declared a riot.
Right, that is just 7 nights ago. So of course police don't want to see that. So I think they think in their minds, let's act quicker and you know, get this crowd to go home before we see a repeat of last Friday. Trying to hear what they're saying now. Who do you serve is what demonstrators are now chanting. That's been one of the chants we've heard throughout the week. Who do you serve? We've heard quit your job. Looks like a laser of some sort is being now flashed at one of the vehicles up there.
There's a good shot where you can see the police officers standing in front of the group of protesters. They have said they do not want to engage with the protesters. They don't want to be the ones to cause the problem. So they're really trying to exercise restraint. You can also see there they have gas masks on.
And there's quite a bit of smoke, Laurel and Maggie, coming up from the area of the Justice Center. So there must be, you know, some sort of crowd down there that they're still trying to disperse. And then they may turn their attention more to this area up here.
Mike, where's the drum coming from? I don't feel like I've heard that over the last week or so.
Right below our camera. Right below our camera.
Right there.
Now, speaking of children, there is a stroller down here, but it's facing the other direction, so I can't tell if there's an actual child in there or not. Might take a look. But the standoff here continues at 4th and Jeff.
Mike, you talked about lasers. The police bureau said they had lasers being pointed at their officers driving their sound truck.
Can you repeat that?
Well, you talked about seeing lasers just a couple of minutes ago, and the police bureau tweeted, I missed this until now, that they had lasers being pointed at the officers driving their sound truck, which is, you know, the truck that was one sort of like the measure that the mayor offered up today as far as a change in tactics, that the loudest capabilities of it would be shut down as far as a crowd control or dispersal method.
Mike and Maggie, it looks like this is going to continue for a while, so what we're going to do is, for people who'd like to continue watching this, we're going to continue covering this on KGW.com. So Mike, Maggie, and I will be there, but we're going to return you here on KGW over the air to our programming, to The Tonight Show. And don't forget to tune in tomorrow morning to our Sunrise Show with Christine Pitawanich tomorrow at 6 a.m. for a complete wrap-up. But join us over on KGW.com, and we'll continue covering this civil disturbance now. Police are calling it that in downtown Portland. Welcome to. I'm Laurel Porter in the studio along with Maggie Vespa in the newsroom. Our Mike Benner is on the ground and he's been reporting for us from downtown Portland. And Maggie, we've seen so many peaceful protests throughout the week, and then later at night they've had some what police call agitators causing some issues. But this started a little bit earlier with seemed like a bigger group of protesters starting to throw things over the fence line there at the Justice Center.
Yeah, basically going by tweets that the police bureau has sent out, they've said that they had water bottles or objects and something from a slingshot apparently shot over the fence and people basically messing with the fence. And the police bureau's response to that was to use flashbang type devices and send smoke into the crowd. And then the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office tweeting that when the smoke didn't work, they did in fact use tear gas, or we've been now told that the terminology the Portland Police Bureau uses is CS gas. And the reason they make that distinction is they say it's a powder form, which is easier to walk out of, and then the effects on you cease. But Mike has been pointing out that basically the police bureau, as soon as they told the crowd to disperse, it wasn't just disperse from this area or disperse from downtown, which is kind of how they've handled it over the last few nights. They set up a specific wide part of downtown that they wanted to blockade off and they wanted people to move out of. So they said from Southwest Lincoln to Burnside, and they told protesters up to 13th from the Waterfront. So that's a huge section of downtown. And pretty quickly after that, they started pushing protesters back by just marching toward them, basically, to try and actually make that in effect happen. So we've been watching from Sky 8 and watching Mike's shot on the ground. And Laurel, it's just been sort of, like you said, a bit of a repeat performance.
And just a minute ago, Portland police said while some people have dispersed as they were ordered to do, crowds have gathered on 4th Avenue. So a lot of people still staying downtown, and they're just reminding everybody that they need to leave the downtown area. We do have Mike Benner. And Mike, can you hear me now? I understand that you're going to be leaving us soon.
Yeah, we're gonna get out of here, Laurel, just for our own safety. You know, right as we kind of went off air at KGW onto KGW.com. There's a situation where it was almost as if the last vehicle of
Well, we just lost Mike's mic.
Will
you repeat that, Mike? We lost your mic for a...
Am I there? Can you hear me?
We can hear you now.
Yeah, I was just going to say, right as we were going from KGW to KGW.com, there's a situation where one of the police vehicles with all the officers on it was almost basically surrounded by demonstrators. There were things being thrown at them. They had to kind of hightail it out of there. So it's, you know, it's getting a little more amped up than, than usual out here. So I think we're going to take off for our own safety and get out of the area and get to safety ourselves.
Yeah, we're glad to have you do that, Mike. Thank you so much for the update, and go ahead and get out of there. We have a shot from Sky 8 now that we're going to keep on. You can see the line of police officers in the middle of downtown Portland as the shot pulls back, just to kind of get a scope of the area. Basically, they're trying to blockade off downtown. It's tough to see. Just
that's a good shot, though, where you can see the Justice Center and the fence and the police guarding that area and trying to, as they continue to say, protect the Justice Center, which does house the jail, which houses 300 adults and 100 staff members inside that Justice Center. So they consider that an essential building, and that's why they put up that fence to keep a perimeter around it. And as far as we know, that the National Guard troops are still trying to help secure that building. They're not engaging with protesters, but helping to keep that building safe.
Yeah, definitely. And there, all of that, the reaction from the police bureau seemingly sort of framed the night of the first major protest in Portland this past Friday, 1 week ago today. And we've been just reminding people of it if they're curious as to why that fencing is up or why sort of this perimeter is set up around the Justice Center. It was on that night that the protesters who were out, some of them very small pocket of the overall group that was out, which was thousands, but a very small group, broke windows of the Justice Center, went into the first floor, set fires. That was declared a riot. And ever since then, Portland police have been coming out in riot gear with force, protecting that building, but basically not hesitating to declare unlawful assemblies and try to push people back from it if and when they say they witness criminal activity. And those things have been, and we pointed this out on Twitter, and we know people basically get angry when they hear police citing things like throwing water bottles as a reason to use flashbangs and tear gas, and or pushing on the fence that police have set up around the Justice Center. And every day we've pressed them on that at the press conference, and they basically cite the need to basically in their minds prevent a riot like what they've seen in the past. So these have been explosive tactics used by the police bureau, controversial tactics that the mayor and the police chief and assistant chief have said that they're reviewing day in and day out. But we have yet to see many real substantive changes of those tactics, although the mayor has promised to sort of issue a decision on tear gas tomorrow, and then he promised a list of policy changes, not necessarily tied to crowd control, although it could very well include that next week, seemingly rather tied to the larger issue that we're all grappling with right now, which is racism and violence against people of color perpetuated by law enforcement in America. So just a heavy, heavy time, but night after night, we've just been watching police struggle to grapple with this situation, and just anger on all sides.
And we did, want to say that this started out as peaceful for many hours, and I watched some of the speeches down by the waterfront, and they were so powerful and poignant, and they really resonated with the crowd. People were compelled to action, to want to change laws and policies and thinking, and you could tell that they were there to be a part of this historic moment. They want to stand in solidarity with the Black community and raise their voices against racial injustice. So that is the message that they want people to get. And the mayor has said every day during these news conferences they hold after the protest the night before that it's been a pattern of two separate groups. There's the very large group protesting for justice, for George Floyd, for Breonna Taylor, would have been her 27th birthday today. She was killed in her own home by police in Louisville, Kentucky. Those are the large group is protesting about that, demanding justice. And then he says a few hundred will start causing some problems later on in the evening. Lieutenant Franz Schering saying that they seem to him to just want to fight the system, to fight the police. So that's seemingly what's happening right now as we come up on about midnight.
Yeah, and these moments have just been avenues for people to just exercise the anger and the rage that they harbor, backed by, of course, the death of George Floyd, the murder of George Floyd, but that backed by generations upon generations of systemic racism and violence perpetuated against people of color. And this has just become a moment for people to express their anger and express their outrage. And tangible manifestation of that is seeing Portland police face off with these groups night after night, with the exception, I think, at this point of just one night where things basically remained completely peaceful. So we've seen sort of factions on all sides, either on the advocacy side or the law enforcement side, struggle to sort of keep messaging on point. We hear from Black leaders and civic leaders who just ache when they see these images, and they say it's sort of the resounding take on it that we've heard is that we don't condone the rioting, but we do understand the anger. And then we see on law enforcement side, they're saying we understand the anger and we appreciate the peaceful protests, but we feel like we can't allow this rioting. And both sides have been trying to sort of maintain that messaging, but address what is fueling these explosive moments that just tend to sort of serve as an end cap to each night. But yeah, we can't reiterate enough that the vast majority, thousands of people, have been marching through Portland and protesting and not participating in these nightly clashes with police, and want the message to be about everybody basically working together and figuring out ways to change the factions of our society that fuel this systemic racism. And at the same time, though, this is still a situation that needs to be dealt with night after night, and we're just watching that play out in real time.
And you're looking at, it's after midnight now, Saturday morning, Sky 8, you can see that still it looks like several hundred people still remain downtown, even though police have declared it an unlawful assembly and told everyone that they need to go home. That really, basically, downtown is closed, this large swath that they have closed off. We talk a lot about this tear gas situation and the controversy about it. We talked about it a few nights ago, just at how health experts were saying that it could lead to a spread of COVID-19. And then medical professionals, including OHSU's President Danny Jacobs, spoke out about the use of tear gas during a coronavirus pandemic. And he said the release of airborne droplets through tear gas-induced coughing could accelerate the spread of COVID-19 and lead to a surge in new cases. Also, COVID-19 can be spread through the eyes, so by rubbing the eyes or helping somebody else pour milk substance into their eyes after tear gas could also spread the disease. Damage to the respiratory tract can put individuals at greater risk of adverse outcomes if they become infected by COVID-19. So there's a lot of controversy about tear gas. Police say it's CS gas, which is a powder. And Don't Shoot Portland spokesperson Teresa Rayford said the use of tear gas demonstrates that police aren't concerned about the harm they're causing. So tomorrow, Mayor Wheeler is going to be talking with leaders about that, considering whether he'll ban the use of tear gas or CS gas in Portland. They've already done it in Seattle. There's the mayor banning it temporarily for 30 days, but police did deploy it today after using smoke that didn't work to disperse the crowd, so they did deploy tear gas this evening.
Yeah, and they deployed it on the very day that they were sued by Don't Shoot PDX and by members of these protest groups who we got a news release from the Oregon Justice Resource Center that they had filed a class action lawsuit against the city of Portland, demanding that they follow in Seattle's footsteps and cease use of this tear gas. And then, we had heard from Mayor Ted Wheeler on the topic because we had pressed him on the topic earlier today. With him basically saying that he supports stopping to use it. And then he said, but if he supports it, if there's a viable alternative. And he said, we have to have these conversations. And I remember thinking in the moment, what's stopping us? What's stopping you, Mr. Mayor, from having these conversations? And it's been now, multiple days of seeing this being used, and that press conference was around noon, and suddenly we hear about a meeting planned for tomorrow. And protesters, when he announced that meeting, when he told protesters that there would be an answer tomorrow, they said, why not tonight? And we've reached out to his office and said, what is the answer to that? You address this around noon. The police department and bureau has addressed this for days about basically what this substance is, why they feel like it's warranted. But we've seen this conversation happening across the country. And we don't know. We haven't heard back from his office. So if they're listening, we would love to, on why this decision hasn't been made. If it's something that the mayor is contemplating, and if it's something that he feels strongly enough to say that he supports the ban like Seattle put into place. So we don't know why there's the lag here. But obviously we, just like everybody else who sort of confronted him in the moment, are very interested to see what happens tomorrow with that. And so it's a really interesting sort of progression of conversations that are coming out of these moments night after night. The police bureau and the city being forced to re-examine a number of things.
Well, so much to keep an eye out for this weekend. We'll be monitoring everything. We expect more protests. You can tell this is going to go into the wee hours of the morning with a few hundred people still downtown where it's been declared an unlawful assembly. Everyone's been ordered to go home, but a lot of people are standing their ground. So as Maggie was saying, the mayor is going to be talking about the use of tear gas tomorrow. He usually holds a news conference around noon to discuss the night before. Our Sunrise crew will be in a few hours. They'll bring you the very latest at 6 a.m. Maggie and I are going to leave, but we're going to leave Sky 8 up and keep the stream going here on KGW.com so you can watch any developments. And of course, on KGW.com, we'll have developments as well. Maggie, you have a final thought?
Well, I do just want to add, our producer told me, in case you're wondering what's up with the chopper shot, they are going to refuel at the moment. But for those who want to continue watching this stream, they will refuel and come back and keep tabs on the situation in downtown Portland. Just, again, on the 8th massive night 8th night of massive protests in the wake of George Floyd's murder. It has just been another semi-explosive night in downtown Portland. We hope that everyone is able to come to a resolution, but we expect these protests to continue throughout the weekend. So thank you, everybody, for joining us, and we'll see you back here tomorrow.
We wish you a good weekend. Thanks for joining us.